Hey guys, welcome back to Wrestling News 365. Hope everyone is doing very well. As always, there is a ton of news stories to get into today, so let's talk about Impact Wrestling. We haven't spoken about Impact for a couple of days, so I did want to get an Impact video in today, even though it's quite late at the time that I'm recording this, but I do want to talk about Impact Wrestling because we do have some Impact Wrestling news stories to get into. Of course, last night was Impact Wrestling on Access TV. I think I'm going to get into the majority of what happened on Impact last night tomorrow, so there is going to be a video tomorrow talking about Impact Wrestling, so we're going to get into that then, but there is quite a few other Impact things that I do want to talk about today. Now, the first thing I want to talk about is Braun Strowman. Now, the reason I'm putting this in the Impact Wrestling news video today is because, of course, we've heard all of these rumors that Braun Strowman is indeed headed to Impact Wrestling. Now, this doesn't confirm that by any stretch of the imagination or anything like that, so I don't know when it comes to these rumors about Braun Strowman. We haven't heard much more since the last report that said that Braun Strowman was headed to Impact Wrestling. That came out about a week or so ago. I think it was Dave Meltzer of the Wrestling Observer newsletter that was reporting that. Of course, Scott D'Amore had kind of hinted at it as well, that possibly Braun Strowman was coming in. They called it Braun for Glory, all that kind of stuff. So there's a possibility he will come in. And I think Braun Strowman's done some tweets as well, hinting that his name in Impact Wrestling might be Titan or something like that, along with his real name, Adam Scherr. We'll have to wait and see. Nevertheless, when it does come to Braun Strowman, we do know what his first post-WWE match will be. We know he's going to be competing in, I think it's Qatar. That's in 2022, but in 2021, we do know what former Universal Champion Braun Strowman's first post-WWE match will be, and it's going to be with EC3, because Adam Scherr, formerly known as Braun Strowman in WWE, has been announced for his first post, I'll get there in the end, WWE booking. Scherr, who became a free agent from his WWE contract on Tuesday, has been announced to face EC3 on the Free the Narrative 2, the Monster in Us All event. Now, EC3's Free the Narrative 2, the Monster in Us All event will be released on Friday, October 1st at midnight. It can be pre-ordered via Vimeo for $10. You can see the trailer for Scherr vs. EC3 on YouTube. Now, Free the Narrative 2 is the sequel to the original Free the Narrative event, which featured EC3 versus Matt Cardona. EC3's official announcement for Free the Narrative 2 noted that many more wrestlers have been announced for the event. The original Free the Narrative event included the likes of Moose, John Skyler, Bill Carr, Matt Sydal, and others. Now, EC3 describes the Free the Narrative event as a series that tells original and personal stories with some professional wrestling's biggest names and those yet known. Free the Narrative is completely independent of any professional wrestling promotion, set to an original score. FTM blends professional wrestling, cinema, and harsh reality in what it will become the true definition of creative freedom for an industry that desperately needs it, and any performer that truly seeks it. To control your narrative is to tell your story. In Free the Narrative, those stories are told. So look, when it comes to this whole Free the Narrative thing, look, I don't mind EC3. I think EC3, I'm kind of a little bit conflicted on. I'll be honest with you. When it comes to him, the reason I'm slightly conflicted on EC3 is because I remember this guy coming into WWE in when did he come back into WWE? 2018? When he went back into NXT, it was I think it was 2018, something like that. I remember when he went back in, there was all of this excitement about what could be when it came to EC3, because obviously we'd seen the success that he had in Impact Wrestling for all of those years, former TNA World Heavyweight Champion, had the last matches of the likes of Kurt Angle and Sting and all that kind of stuff in Impact Wrestling. Obviously went to WWE, it didn't work out, and I don't think that's necessarily his fault or anything like that. I think that's, once again, the WWE system failing him. I think when he came back as EC3, that wasn't a WWE creation, so they don't like that anyway. Certainly Vince McMahon doesn't. And when EC3 came up to the main roster, Vince McMahon saw what he saw before, a guy that was in good shape, but he felt he was very bland. Furthermore, he was meant to be feuding with Dean Ambrose at the time. Dean Ambrose was leaving in 2019, and Dean Ambrose was meant to be the heel. EC3 was meant to be the babyface. They cheered Dean Ambrose and they booed EC3 because WWE fans, and I think pro wrestling fans, just hate the WWE system, especially when they're being told to do something they don't want to do. EC3 got punished for that, and After that, Vince McMahon didn't care anymore, which was weird because when you think about it, EC3 is the prototypical person that Vince McMahon would really care about. You know, great look, great physique, good talker. The in-ring stuff's fine, but you would think that Vince McMahon, it's kind of Vince McMahon's dream of what a professional wrestler has looked like. So it is kind of bizarre when you think that it didn't work out for him there. Nevertheless, when he left, there was this excitement once again of this guy that did great work prior to WWE, so he could do great work afterwards again. And it's kind of a case of, I don't know, with him, like maybe the paranoia of what happened to him in WWE has kind of froze him. Obviously, he did the work in Impact Wrestling against Moose, which I myself wasn't a big fan of. I just thought that it could have been way, way, way better. The plan was to build to an actual in-ring match at Bound for Glory. Impact Wrestling decided to go in a different direction. They wanted to do a cinematic match, which I really didn't like. I thought the cinematic match was overly confusing and too... I don't know, you know when sometimes it's like someone when they're like reciting poetry and they're trying to be too deep and they're trying to be too meaningful, or you watch a film and they're trying to, again, be too deep, or this actually means this and by this I mean this. It's like, or watching a film, they're trying to be dramatic and it's just, not that it's cheesy, but it's just like, man, you're trying way, way too hard. And it kind of feels like that sometimes when you watch this, like, Free the Narrative stuff, because I watched the stuff he did on YouTube before he returned to Impact, and of course he's in Ring of Honor now. He had a serious injury. I think it was a staph infection or something like that towards the end of, it was earlier this year actually, rather, and he was quite ill for a period of time, so I'm glad to see that he's better and he's recovered. Nevertheless, when I watch those Free the Narrative things, the production in it's really strong and really good, but it's just a case of, I don't know, maybe he's trying to reinvent the wheel or try something different, which you credit him for, like the whole Ultimate Deletion thing, but not as comedic and maybe more serious. But I just feel when I see stuff like this and I see it's pro wrestling mixed with cinema and all that kind of stuff, I don't know about you, and this isn't because I'm recording it so late and I'm a bit grumpy this evening, but I've just had my fill. I've had my fill of cinematic pro wrestling. I think everyone has, considering how much of it we've seen over the course of the last however many months with the pandemic. You know, pro wrestling was kind of backed into a corner because of the lack of fans throughout the pandemic, and they decided to lean on doing cinematic matches, and that was fine. And initially, it was exciting because it was different. Now, in 2021, in September, once fans are back, I just don't really have much of an interest to see cinematic wrestling once again. And I see stuff like this, and again, I sort of read the bio, and it's like, oh, it's about telling your story and freeing your narrative, and it's about creative freedom and all this kind of stuff. And you can see the trailer again when it's very, you know, an attempt to be cinematic, and it's just a case of stop trying so hard with that kind of stuff. Pro wrestling is best when it's simple, not when you overcomplicate. It's the same with WWE. Pro wrestling, their biggest problem is they try and overcomplicate it by having great creative ideas. Part of the problem with the whole Alexa Bliss and Lily stuff right now, that's WWE's attempt at being creative and having a bit of horror and being outside the box. Not to say that this is going to be bad, but it's just a case of, like, you know, I mentioned it when I did the AEW news video earlier. I was talking about the Gun Club. You look at it and you go, who cares? Who cares? But nevertheless, Scher was released from his WWE contract on June 2nd. He's been rumored to have signed with Impact Wrestling. Scott D'Amore, of course, Impact Wrestling Executive Vice President, actually teased him for Bound for Glory in October. He recently teased that he'll be using the name Titan as his post-WWE ring name, but for now, the former Universal Champion is just going to be using his real name. So we know where Braun Strowman is going to land up first in his post-WWE career. Now, obviously, Impact Wrestling, as I mentioned, was last night on Access TV. We're not going to talk too much about it tonight. We're going to talk about it tomorrow, but this is something we had spoke about previously here on the channel, so I did want to kind of confirm it, and that is that Impact Wrestling just got Outlandish. Now, last night on Impact Wrestling saw the Impact Wrestling debut of none other than NWA, or former NWA television champion, Outlandish Zicky Dice. Now, this was in a segment with Brian Myers, so it looks like a case of Brian Myers being with Zicky Dice going forward. Of course, he's got his little faction, I suppose, that he's sort of building up in Impact Wrestling as well, with Sam Beale too. So I mentioned this before about Zicky Dice, so I don't want to repeat too much about it. I didn't mind his work in NWA Power, the original run of NWA Power, not the current version of NWA, but the original version of NWA Power when it was on YouTube. I thought Zicky Dice was all right. I thought he was okay. I think obviously he can talk. There's no doubt about that. He can talk. Sometimes it's a bit too over the top for my liking, but he can certainly cut a promo, and I think he does fit in Impact Wrestling. The reason I say I think he does fit in Impact Wrestling is because they have in the past certainly done those segments where the comedy is way, 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 way over the top, and you go, this just really wouldn't work in some other situations, but they've pulled it off before, whether it's Wrestle House or Who Shot Johnny Bravo, that kind of stuff. So I think they can pull it off. And I think Zicky Dice will fit in well. I'm interested to see again what the creative plans are for him going forward with Brian Myers and Sam Beal. Obviously, Brian Myers is just coming off an Impact World Championship match against Christian Cage. So that's going to be interesting going forward. But I'm glad for Zicky Dice because I know that he did have a lot of troubles in terms of getting out of the NWA. And I think during the pandemic last year, I think he requested his release on a couple of occasions and it wasn't granted. And then eventually his contract did expire, but he still had to drop the NWA Television Championship. And I think he thought there were going to be offers for basically waiting for him. And that wasn't the case. It's taken some time. But now he's landed in Impact Wrestling, and probably that's the best place for him right now. So I'm interested to see how this plays out in the long term for Zicky Dice. This is a really interesting story. Talking about No Way Jose, or just No Way. He's not No Way Jose anymore. He's just No Way in Impact Wrestling. And that's that No Way found out he was working Slammiversary in July because of former Intercontinental Champion Apollo Crews from the WWE. That's how crazy it is. So No Way has revealed that then WWE Intercontinental Champion Apollo Crews told him he was making his Impact Wrestling debut at Slammiversary. Now, No Way had spent much of the previous 14 months outside of pro wrestling following his WWE release, but he made his first appearance in Impact Wrestling at the July pay-per-view, aligning himself with Fowler Bar in the process. Now, speaking on the Wrestling Perspective podcast, No Way detailed how his Impact Wrestling debut came to be. He said, quote, they had it in the works. They were working my butt. Absolutely no talks about anything with anybody about coming to Impact. So I was like, cool. I think I mentioned it to Scott a few weeks before. Like, if you ever need me, let me know. But that was the extent of the conversation. Then the previous night, they were doing that Deonna promo. And then he dropped a couple of hits or whatever. And at the end, he did that No Way Jose thing. Tommy came back and I just texted him and I was like, a huge pop, still no talk about anything. And he was like, imagine that you come in. And I was like, yeah, that's fine. No Way. That's what No Way said. It's very bizarre. He then said, then in the morning, I went to lift, obviously, at the gym, legs. I did a hell of a leg day. Then something. It was like, you know what, just in case, because wrestling's wrestling, let me stretch after this, because usually your boy don't stretch. So I stretched for like 45 minutes, and then in the morning I got a text from him, and he was like, are you booked tomorrow? I was like, no. He was like, stand by. So, I'm on the West Coast. It was 3 o'clock by the time he texted back and was like, all right, we need you here tomorrow. I'm like, holy SHI, you know the rest. I leave at 6 in the morning. It's 3 o'clock now. Let's go, baby. So I flew in, did one connecting flight to the other. I got to the airport. I got picked up. And the brother who was taking me to the venue, I leaned over and I looked at him and I said, oh, by the way, do you know what the hell I'm doing? Because I still don't know. I didn't know what I was doing, man. It was actually Apollo Crews who texted me. He was like, oh, you're working Slammiversary. And I was like, oh, SHI, you broke the news. A guy from a different company told me what I was doing that night. That popped the hell out of me. So I don't know how Apollo Crews knew. I would assume, putting those dots together, Apollo Crews is very good friends with Moose. Moose would probably know that No Way Jose is coming in. And I would assume that probably Moose told Apollo Crews. So basically, No Way Jose there is kind of confirming that Moose is telling Impact Wrestling plans to Apollo Crews, which is certainly interesting to know, just in case for the future when you see how things come out. It's because the boys talk. The boys talk and they talk to other people who eventually leak it out to certain websites and all that kind of stuff. So that's interesting. It's an interesting story that those surprises that we were thinking and discussing about for Slammiversary really weren't even decided. Some of them, like No Way Jose, they weren't even decided until days before the event. And it kind of just came out in terms of a throwaway line that Scott D'Amore did on television or something like that. And suddenly it was like, yeah, that would be good actually. And then they call him. Crazy. I guess that's just pro wrestling, right? That's pro wrestling. Speaking of a recent debut in Impact Wrestling, Matthew Rehwoldt has revealed who helped him land in Impact Wrestling as well. Now, at Slammiversary, Impact teased the arrival of the Drama King, hinting that the former Aiden English would be coming to the promotion. He then made his debut at the Impact Homecoming event, teaming with Deonna Purrazzo. Now, speaking to Lucha Libre Online, Rehwoldt explained how he came to Impact Wrestling. He said, "I spent a lot of time figuring things out and seeing where I wanted to go, reaching out to different avenues and exploring different avenues. I've been doing podcasting, Twitch streaming, and all kinds of stuff. I reached out to a couple of friends of mine in Impact Wrestling, notably people like Sami Callihan and Eric Young, who are two good friends of mine and were always guys who spoke highly of me, and we have great relationships. They put in a good word and a lot of back and forth. Eventually, this homecoming tournament came up, and the idea started brewing. Well, there's the virtuosa, Deonna Purrazzo, who is a proper and credible athlete, walking on air sort of thing, and that's what the Drama King does in his own way. The timing and marriage of the style and time worked out really well. I loved it because Homecoming, outside of Slammiversary, was the first set of tapings with a live audience. It was such a fortuitous time to be brought in, and I couldn't have walked into a better locker room and vibe and atmosphere. Since then, it's just been kicking off." Now, so basically he's saying that Sami Callihan and Eric Young were the guys that got him into Impact Wrestling, so it kind of shows their influence, which is to be expected. But I just think it's funny that, like, the modern day, because Impact Wrestling isn't the indie scene, but the modern day sort of, that kind of whole scene, it kind of, there's so much NXT involvement now, and it's just crazy given what's going on right now with NXT, given what's going on with this whole rebrand of NXT, and are Bruce Pritchard and Vince McMahon going to be producing it, and all this kind of stuff. That's just craziness, really, that's going on with NXT right now. Is you've got something as simple as Matthew Rehwoldt coming into Impact Wrestling, and that's because of NXT. That's because Eric Young, Sami Callihan, and Matthew Rehwoldt were all there at the same time, and it's just, whenever I see these stories now, I'm like, man, it's still got the fingerprints all over everything. So it's fascinating. Look, when Aiden English came into Impact, I mentioned before that, I mean, and the video's probably on the channel somewhere, you can find it. I was pitching to have Aiden English come into Impact for goodness, right after he was released in April 2020, because he can do so much, because he can wrestle, he can talk, he can be a manager, he can be a commentator as well, which I still wouldn't be completely against. I would like to see him maybe move into the commentary booth, even though I do prefer the two-person booth. I think that's an option in the future. So there's so much he can do. It just felt like a given. It felt like a given. A smaller company where you do have to wear so many different hats, I thought he is the perfect fit for it. So I'm surprised it took him this long, but I'm glad to see the former Aiden English in Impact Wrestling. I very much am. Ace Austin has revealed why he signed with Impact Wrestling. Speaking about his time in Impact on the WrestleSlam podcast, Austin revealed why he opted to sign with the promotion over other promotions. He said, "Absolutely, it's an honor to work with Impact Wrestling. I mean, I don't know how many people knew, but I absolutely had a choice in the matter in 2018. I want to make sure that people know that. Impact didn't just, pick me out of the bunch of as an indie. I was doing really well for myself in 2018, and I had a choice where I wanted to go and who I wanted to work with. And Impact showed me the most hospitality, and they showed me the best working environment that was out there. And that's why I chose to start with Impact Wrestling back then. And just because I could not have thought of a better way to really lay a foundation for myself in this industry, and it's done nothing but boost up, People are getting to watch a very organic story right in front of their very eyes, like a story of just a young, hungry kid who wanted to be a pro wrestler. Like really fighting and earning it. I think Ace Austin absolutely made the right decision in signing with Impact Wrestling when he did in 2018. People forget how young he is still. He's still in like his mid-20s. It's just outrageous. And I don't think he'll stay in Impact. Well, I know he's not going to stay in Impact Wrestling for the remainder of his career. He's the type of talent, and I think he still does have like 18 months or something left on his contract. And I wouldn't put it against him re-signing, to be honest with you. I could see Ace Austin re-signing with Impact for another 18 months, year and a half, 2 years, something like that. Because again, he's got time on his side. And but I do think he'll end up in a... I would have said previously an NXT. I could certainly see him there, given the way that WWE's moving. They're moving away from indie talent, and certainly Ace Austin is on the shorter side. He's not on the, he's completely jacked up, but he's certainly on the shorter side. I could maybe see a situation where maybe NXT wouldn't go for him now, but I could certainly see an AEW, or maybe it's a case of Impact's the best place for him for a long period of time. So certainly that is interesting as well. Finally, a really nice story. I really like this story, and that's that Impact Wrestling's X Division champion Josh Alexander has declared that he is now officially a professional wrestler. Alexander took to Twitter this week and issued a statement on how he is no longer working as a construction insulator. The walk-in weapon, who has been married to indie wrestler Jay Chung since 2016 with 2 kids, thanked his supporters and the companies who had given him opportunities. He tweeted out, quote, "I've dreamt of this day longer than I can remember. A day when I don't need to wake up at 3 a.m. to work out before heading to the job site. A day when I don't rush from my red-eye home to a shift. A day when I can finally have time to truly dedicate myself to the business that I love. It's a stressful thought running around without that security blanket of guaranteed income, but risks often produce the biggest rewards. I've often wondered what I'd be able to do as a wrestler when I don't have to work 40+ hours a week on top of training and travel. It's a scary thought. I guess now we finally get to find out." He also continued, "None of this is possible without the support of the fans, without Impact Wrestling giving me countless opportunities to show I'm a world-class wrestler, without all the independent promotions that book me and give me the time to grow my brand and do what I love. I can't thank you, all of you enough. I'll continue to show my gratitude by giving everything I have every time I step in a ring, no matter where or for whom." Alexander included a photo of his construction gear and captioned the post with, "It took 15 years, but I'm finally a professional wrestler." I think this is such a great story because I don't think people see this enough. And that's that usually, especially in promotions like Impact, and we talk about people like Josh Alexander all the time on here, and you would think, right, they must just completely earn a living from pro wrestling. It's not true. It's not true. Unless you really work in, WWE or AEW or certain other indie promotions, depending on how well known you are. So a lot of people, pro wrestling's a part-time job. Jordan Grace said it. That's why she decided to re-sign with Impact, because she works also as a transcriber. And a lot of these people who, again, assume are celebrities still have regular jobs because they need that income for themselves and their family. And that's why I love this story, because it goes to show that how great is Josh Alexander? Josh Alexander is an unbelievable pro wrestler, one of the best going today, and he was essentially doing that whilst also working a full-time job 40 hours a week. It's unbelievable. The dedication and the drive, if that's not inspiring, then I don't know what is. So congratulations to Josh Alexander. I think it's a tremendous story, and I think it's only the beginning for him. I really do. I think he's going to be the next Impact World Champion later this year. But look, guys, as always, this is just one man's opinion. What are your thoughts on all these Impact Wrestling news stories we've spoken about today? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. I'll do my best to respond and reply to all of your comments. Really enjoy interacting with you guys, talking about Impact Wrestling, AEW, WWE, New Japan Pro Wrestling, all things pro wrestling here on the channel. So be sure to get involved in the community. Drop a comment below. All opinions are welcome. If you have enjoyed this video, please do smash a like on the like button too. Really does help us out here on YouTube. Got the rankings and get into people's recommendation feeds if they haven't seen our videos previously. But most importantly, if you haven't already, please do subscribe to Wrestle News 365. You can do that by clicking the bottom right hand corner of the screen right now, or if you wait a few seconds, there'll be a subscribe button at the end of this video along with another video for you to watch. Thank you very much for watching, listening, streaming, or have you come across this video today, and I'll speak to you again very, very soon.
Hey guys, thank you for watching, listening, streaming, or however you come across this video today. Be sure to click on the video on the right there to watch our next video, or click the bottom there to subscribe, or the bottom right hand corner. Thank you very much, and I'll speak to you again very soon.